Hi, this is Stephen Brower from Raritan Valley Community College. This is for Computer Literacy Summer 2017, and there's going to be a series or multiple parts to this video, and it's meant to be an overview of all three chapters, 18A, 18B, 18C. I will have in the description of the video of the topics that are in each one. Which means if you want to jump to a topic, look at the topics and then jump to where you need to go. Let me just start PowerPoint. And one of the things that, let me just do blank presentation. One of the things that we first noticed that we're in a blank presentation is that we got, well, these really big things here. These are known as placeholders, and the idea behind a placeholder is that it's sort of like a bucket. It's a pre-formatted bucket, and if you notice, the text is bigger on the title than it is here on the subtitle. The way in which this slide is laid out is called a layout, and that's something that I'll take a closer look at it later. But we actually we can change the layout of a slide once we have, and also on picking a new slide, we can say the kind of layout that we want. But the rough idea is that we click in a placeholder and then we type in, what we want to type. I was going to do demo PowerPoint, and I was going to say Brower or BCC. I'm just being lazy about it. Let me just save this. Oops, sorry. Let me just take the here. Let me just do demo 18A. 18B, 18C. Okay. Before I get into the design, let me just go and do another slide. Now, this right here, this new slide, it's actually a split button. And so the bottom part will be a drop-down list where we can pick the kind of slide we want. And the top part is just going to be the default. And when you're in the title slide, by default, if you click new slide, we're going to get something that's called title and content. And so the idea here, and actually let me talk about the let's see, overarching directions for PowerPoint. By the way, one way to jump from one placeholder to the other is to do Control-Enter. And by doing Control-Enter, it switches from the first placeholder now to the second placeholder. Let me just do real quick, and I'll talk about this for a second. Generally, what's encouraged with PowerPoint presentations is to keep it simple. Yes, from a keeping your audience awake point of view, that the more bells and whistles and animations, etc., that you have, it can be, in a sense, entertaining. But as a presenter, one thing I can say, let me just click over here for a second. Actually, let me save while I'm doing this. As a presenter, when you have too many custom animations and the slide building bullet by bullet, it's easy to, especially if you're nervous in the presentation, to not remember all the different animations and sort of get overwhelmed. The other thing, the 7x7 rule, now there's going to be a later slide, and it might be a different part by the time I demonstrate this, but the guideline is to have 7 lines and no more than 7 words per line, basically keeping the 50 words for a slide. Beyond that, it becomes overwhelming. So usually for presentations, we really want the slides to be sort of just, they are bullets, but in that more of like phrases, not complete sentences. Now, unfortunately, the chapters 18A, 18B, and 18C are going to have us put in War and Peace in some of the slides, and I kind of twitch a little when I see that. Thinking of the 7x7 rule, some of the slides that we actually are going to enter are going to kind of break that 7x7 rule. I'm sorry, I went off on a huge tangent. Well, I think an important one, though. But looking at, in terms of the layouts, if I now go and take a look at the layout, since this slide 2, is the one that's active, the one that's gray here is the title and content. If I go back here and I look at the layout of this slide, we see it's the title slide. So a slide can be changed from one layout to another if you need to do that. And there are a number of different layouts. So let's say I want to have after this slide maybe a blank slide or a slide with a title only. I can actually go and pick a specific slide. But if I just take the default, then when we're on the title, we get title and content. When we're on title and content, we get title and content. One of the other things that that I do want to point out, point two, other point. Actually, I forgot the point. Oh, I'm sorry. What I was supposed to do, I just used the keyboard, the content below. It's yes, if we start clicking here, by default we're going to get text, but there are these little icons here, and so the idea is that if we want to insert a picture from a file or a picture online, or if we want to embed a table or a chart, that these little icons here are sort of shortcut ways to go and bring up those different items. Now, by default, this is a very bland looking presentation because this is just white background, black text. There's no color, there's no special shapes. Under design, and we just click on the more here, there's a number of different sort of themes that we can actually pick from. There's a handful that we get, and then there's more that are we can get elsewhere. And what the different themes will have, and as I hover over one, we'll see sort of a different peek at them. They'll have different colors, they'll have different fonts. Actually, you know what, it might be a little more obvious if I'm, well, no, because it's going to be behind anyway. But more, you can actually see a glance of the text on the right, how the font is actually different depending on which one we have. And it's the kind of thing that we can pick something, and then we can go back, and then we can overlay it later. The other thing that can be done, and this is one of the three parts gets into it, is that we actually could apply a different design to the different slides. Again, thinking about that KISS, keep it simple, you don't want to have too many designs because it can become distracting if there's too many things that are being presented going along the way. Hang on one second. Sorry for the blip in the video. I just was hitting pause and checking my script. One of the things I started to talk about, and if I come back here, we in the Word chapter we did some inserting of online pictures, and we can do the same thing in terms of the PowerPoint. But if you notice what I did, let me go back again, is that in this title and content layout, that this button here, the idea is that the content that I can add to this part of the slide, I can now go online and I can grab a picture from online. One of the three presentations, and I forget which, I was going to do flowing water because that was one of the three. It was pouring water. Flowing, pouring, what's the difference? Pouring water. There you go. You may not find the exact picture that's in the book, and so the idea is to pick one of the other, or one of something that is representing flowing water. Depending on which one you pick, though, it may not necessarily, for that aspect of the lab or of the chapter, the following formats can be a little bit off if the size isn't exactly what's good. I'm just randomly picking one and sticking it in here. But what could happen is you could pick a picture that looks nice, and then when they have you go in and change the height and so on, things may not exactly kind of line up. But one of the things that's done between the three chapters is getting into applying picture styles, artistic effects, picture effects, and basically there's a lot of that. We did see that in Word, and really a lot of the stuff that we did in Word for affecting pictures will be the same thing here in PowerPoint as well. Okay. Well, let me save. What I want to do, and what I'm not sure, because I'm using the Screencast-O-Matic, I'm not sure how exactly that this will look within the screencast-o-matic. But under slideshow, if you have two monitors, and we can actually simulate this. So this is the part I'm not sure if it's going to work. I'm going to hit Alt F5. And if the screencast-o-matic is still working, if I did have two monitors, this would be the part that's displaying on the monitor that people are seeing. In other words, let's suppose I'm standing in front of the classroom. This would be my view as I'm looking at the monitor that's in front of the classroom, this entire thing here. But only this part would be broadcast onto the overhead projector. So in this view, what we can see, though, is we can see what's the next slide. And sometimes that can help, especially if you're a little bit nervous. I mean, what I do advise is that you have a paper copy of your slides, and we'll talk about that soon. But even if you have that, or let's say you drop it, or coffee gets spilled on it, or whatever, the fact that you can see the next slide can be helpful. And so that's one of the things that is done, is showing how we can, while we're doing the presentation, and kind of see what the next slide is. And actually, when that's done, I think it's an 18A. One of the slides actually does have some notes down here. Actually, let me get out of the slideshow. So suppose down here, and if I expand the notes a little bit, so suppose I had here is, I don't know, explain I don't know, X, Y, Z. I'm not being very articulate on this, but if then when I get to really the one before, I'm sorry. When I'm on the slide that has the notes, then here are the notes for the slide. So this is the kind of thing that us as a presenter, we can see the notes that we write to ourselves. But since the people that are looking at the overhead are only seeing this image right here, they're not seeing the notes that we have. So we can write notes to ourselves. And this is the nice thing about the later versions of PowerPoint, is in this sort of presenter view, we can see our notes on the screen and no one else can. So in the old days, what we had to do, and I'll try to do this quickly right now, is let me go and print, and instead of full page slides, well, let me just, I'm going to click on the 6 slides vertical, and the idea is that if I were to print, these would come out, but if I were to print notes pages, and here you go, it happens to show the note page here, the slide would be on top, the notes that we would have on the bottom. So the notes pages, if we had these when we were doing our presentation, we would see the slide, we can see the notes underneath, and it's something where we can write clues or cues to ourselves about saying certain things, or even if we're doing a technical presentation, it could even be definitions of certain things. Okay. Now, if you notice in the handouts right here that there's no footer, there is a page number, and actually if I look back at the slides do not have a slide number on it. So one of the things that we're going to go over in, again, between these 3 chapters is applying 2 things. One, for notes and handouts, so for like that view I was in previously, we actually can get like the date on there, and what they have us do is actually a footer, and I'm just going to put blah blah, just for now, to apply to all. Now that, since I was on notes and handouts, that didn't actually go onto the slides, but if I go back and I print these handouts again, then we see that the blah blah is down here. So with the header and footer, like in Word, the header and footer was on everything. Here, we can have a header and footer on the slides, we can have a header and footer on the handouts. So those are 2 different things. So when we were in this mode right here, the slide, these would go on the slides, and the handouts, these would be on the handouts. Since I'm limited to 15 minutes for these things, this is going to be the end of part 1. And again, this is an overview of all 3, 18A, 18B, 18C. And so part 2 will pick up with this presentation.